Good morning, friends. Welcome to the CTE Scholarship webinar. We're excited to have you here today, and we are recording this, so we will be able to send it out on the listservs and have it on our website. So I'm Bethany Marker. I know many of you. If I don't, welcome. I'm the School Counseling Specialist here at USBE. And then we have with us Ashley Higgs, who's one of our CTE specialists. We love working with Ashley with CCA, and she'll be doing the webinar today on the CTE scholarships. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to her.
Perfect. Thanks, Bethany. Just to make sure you guys are seeing the USBE website, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so like Bethany said, my name is Ashley Higgs, and I am one of the CTE education specialists here at USBE. And one of my job responsibilities is to oversee the CTE Tuition Scholarship Award. And so the whole purpose of this webinar is to go through the actual application process, go through the website, answer any questions that you might have, or the typical questions that we might get with regards to the application or applying or things along those lines. So if you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Bethany is my Vanna White, so she will let me know if there's any questions. Like Bethany said, we will be recording this, and I will show you where it will be housed on the USBE website. And then that way you can direct students to the webinar. I kind of gear this towards the student and being able for the student to watch it and understand what's required, what's expected. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Now, I am at the USBE homepage, the schools.utah.gov. Where you go to find the application is under schools and educators. I'm going to click on career and technical education. From there, on the left-hand side, I'm going to scroll all the way down to resources. And then I'm going to click on scholarship and tuition awards. And this is where all of the scholarship and tuition award can be found. There's 5 different categories that we kind of broke it up into. When you look at the overview and timeline, this will tell you which institutions participate. If you notice, BYU, University of Utah, and Utah State do not participate. So if a student is like, yeah, I want this scholarship for BYU, unfortunately, it doesn't apply to them. But we do show which institutions there are, how many scholarships, and then the amount. And then I'll also show you the FAQs in a minute. And this will give you a little bit more detail on what each institution requires or what's available in each institution. Then if you come down here, here's your timeline. So if you send things out to parents or things like that, the scholarship opened yesterday. Today we're doing the webinar. I will show you where the link to view that is in a second. Applications are due January 30th by 11:59 p.m. And we're using the same platform that we have for the last couple of years, which is Adobe Sign. And then we actually have a committee. It's not just myself that goes through these scholarships, but every scholarship is scored twice by 2 different people. And then if there is a discrepancy on scoring, we actually have a 3rd person come in and score the applications. So if people are wondering, hey, how are these scored? We have 2 individuals score 1 application, and then if there's a discrepancy, we have a 3rd person. And then February and March is when we will start sending out notices. We will send out information to CTE directors like, hey, these students were awarded a scholarship, and work with your CTE director. We just found it's a little bit easier of a streamline. So lists will be sent out for those that were awarded. It's kind of a 2-step process. So we will award a scholarship. So let's say Bethany gets one from Utah State, not Utah State, Utah Valley University. I will send an email to Bethany and whoever she puts as her guardians on her scholarship that says, hey, you've been awarded this scholarship. She will fill out a Google form to say whether or not they accept it. And we wait for that acceptance to say, okay, this scholarship has been used. After the first round, we give them a deadline of when to reply. Then we do a second round and then possibly a third round, just depending on which scholarships are left and if students picked those institutions as a scholarship. But usually by March, when there's notified. And then my contact information, if you have any questions with regards to that. I would tell parents and students is to look at the application scoring and the preparation, as well as the qualifications. We kind of tell you everything that's on the application before you even start. So, scoring, it tells you how we are scoring this. Please, please, please tell your students to write incomplete sentences, to capitalize, to proofread, do all of those things. Here are the short answer essays. I would recommend, if a student is doing this, to get their essay questions written and revised and proofread and everything the months of November. And then in December is when they're collecting, December and January, they're collecting their documentation. The reason I say that, one of the requirements is a transcript, and every LEA is different on when their first semester ends. Some of you before the holiday break, the winter break, some of you end in the middle of January. And so that's why I say have your students do the short answer essays in November, and then in December and January is when they're collecting the documentation that they need for the application. And then here are the documents that they need. They've changed a little bit, in fact, of what they need, but nothing drastically. So you need a USBE media release form. There's an English and a Spanish version that's attached, a letter of recommendation from a CTE teacher, and we recommend them pick a teacher within the pathway that they are a concentrator or completer in. A signed unofficial transcript. So the reason we say unofficial is because we had parents or students reach out that says they won't give me one because it has to be in a sealed envelope. We just need to have a document that identifies what courses they have completed and the grade, so we can identify whether they're a concentrator or a completer. Now, one thing we wanted to make sure students knew is they need to highlight what their CTE courses are, otherwise they will be DQ'd. And so we tried to be very specific and call out the things that why applications got disqualified. The reason is every LEA has a different transcript, so sometimes it's hard to identify what courses are which courses, and so we want them to identify what by highlighting, and this is a great time for them to sit down with a counselor or the scholarship advisor in their school to identify what those courses are. Then they also need to include the pathway. The reason is because they can take their pathway and they can take their transcript and they can identify on both of them which courses have been completed, so they can verify whether they're a concentrator or a completer. And then there's skills certifications. We added a little blurb of which certifications don't count because we get this a lot. CPR certifications are not one. First aid, their food handler manager one is not. Sometimes we get student body officer certificates or honor roll. These are usually your youth science exams that they take at the end of a course, or it could be industry certifications like an Adobe or Microsoft. I'm trying to think of some other ones, if some will pop to me. But we want to make sure that they're collecting those. When it comes to skills certifications, If a kid earns a certification for a semester course, they will get 0.5 points for each of those certificates that are semester based. If it is a year-long course, they will get 1 point. The reason we did that is because we didn't want to penalize a student for taking a year-long course versus a semester course. So that's the difference between the 2 point variables on those.
Ashley, really quick, there's a
Yes.
question.
Mhm.
So they said I have a student who's going to have a pathway by the end of their senior year, but they haven't completed it yet. What I just saw in there, it says currently enrolled courses not counted. So that how do they distinguish that, or do they not?
So we can't. So every
Okay.
every student's in that same boat. Their second semester courses or their second trimester or third trimester courses, they just don't count towards it because a kid could be enrolled and if they don't have credit, if they don't receive credit, like you never know what's going to happen. And so we only count on the transcript the ones where they have received letter grade and actual credit. We can't we don't do ones that they're currently haven't gotten the credit for. Any other questions before I go on to the next
That's the only
section?
one I got in the chat, but I
Okay.
just realized that was to me, but okay. Anyway.
Well, I can answer it anyways.
Yes, you
Okay,
answer
for
it.
qualifications. So this scholarship is only for students who will be graduating seniors in by September 1st of 2026. Question I always get is, well, what if I'm a junior and I'm going to graduate early? Yes, you can apply for this because you are graduating. So the other thing is that you need to be enrolled in a Utah school as well as live in the state of Utah. And I'm going to give the example of Rich High School, where there's some kids that live in Wyoming but go to Rich High School. They're not qualified for this scholarship. They have to live and participate in a Utah school. Um, these are the requirements again. And then the application is right here. It's kind of hidden. I know, I apologize. This is just where it lives. So it's under qualifications and application. And then right under here is the application. And I'll click on that in a second, but I just want to go through the rest. When it comes to your U-Science certification, these are links as well as a video tutorial on how to get your information or your skill certs if students don't have them. If you cannot get them, please reach out to U-Science. Us at USBE do not have access to it. Your LEA might have access to it, but support at uscience.com will quicker way to find it. I would also not wait till the last minute to do it because typically we get 200 plus applications. And so if everyone waits till the last minute, U-Science could get bogged down and you might not get your resources. So just a heads up on that. Like we typically tell students, don't wait till the last minute. There's always something that's going to happen. Now, the other great thing that I tell to, students or parents when they call is look at the FAQs for each of the institutions. The reason I say that is because each institution is different and each institution offers different pathways. So if I want to go to Bridgerland Tech College and my goal is to be an elementary school or school teacher, unfortunately, Bridgerland does not offer that opportunity for me. So when I click on Bridgerland, we ask kind of all of the common questions like, can I defer the scholarship at Bridgerland? Yes, I can. And then it says, what's the requirement to do that? On all of them, we've identified who can apply for the CTE scholarship. And then we ask if it's full tuition. If not, we ask them what it does cover. We ask if they get a scholarship, usually typically starts in the fall. Can they access it in the summer? And then this is the important part. Which pathways are available? So if you notice, K-12 teaching as a profession or early childhood is not. That's how I know I can't go to Bridgerland because they don't offer the courses or the pathway that I want to go into. Then we ask other questions such as, can they get other scholarships? Can they renew? And then the last question is, when are those funds available? And so those are typically the FAQs that we usually get. We have these for every single institution. So if I go to Utah Tech, it will tell me this one I can't defer. Who can apply? Are they full tuition? Here's all of the pathways, if there's any scholarship that it doesn't go towards, and so forth. So if a student is wanting to apply for this, the first thing I would ask is, what is it you want to go into? And then look at the FAQ to determine whether or not that pathway is available. Okay. And
Ashley,
there,
we have a question about, is it possible to defer a scholarship for a church service mission? Is that the same deferment, just yes or no
yes,
on
it
those?
depends on the institution. So for example, Utah Tech says, no, there's no deferment, none whatsoever. Typically, all of the deferments relate to church or military or service of some sort. On every single one, we'll ask whether or not you can defer it. If it says no, then the answer is no. Good question. And then last but not least is the publications and resources. This is where we have the flyers that you can use. We have the last year's of winners. Where it says videos, this is where we'll put the link to this webinar. Once we get it recorded and get the link to it, that's where it will be. When it comes to the skills certifications, one of the things, they have to be all in one document. So we've included this Adobe Acrobat combined files. If you click on that, you just drag all of the, in fact, I'll just click on it so you can see. All I do, oh, that's gonna make me sign in. And of course, the internet's slow as we do this. So what you'll do is you'll just drag and drop all of your files in here. And then it will say convert to one document. And then that's how you get all of your skill certs into one document. So we provided that Utah programs and majors so you can identify whether a pathway is there, as well as, again, the UScience certification if they need to find it. Any questions on the website portion? We're good? Okay, so let's go back to qualifications and application. And let's say I am ready to do the awards application. Again, it pops up as a Adobe sign document. Now, something that is cool that we haven't had for a while or before is the save for later. So in the past, we have had to tell students, make sure you have all of your information, type it up, do all of that sort of stuff. You can actually save it one time, is what I looked like, what it seemed like when I was playing around with it. You can save it one time. When you save it, it will ask you for an email address. You'll type in an email address and it will send you a link that you can go back and do it. So what I would recommend doing is having your students in November do their short essays. I would still recommend doing it in a Word doc or a Google Doc so they can proofread, make sure spelling and everything is correct. They could upload, they could type in all of that information, and then they could go gather their documents in December, January, submit the documents, and then submit the application. Or they can do it all in one sitting. It's totally fine, but I do want to show that there is a save for later option. So for example, we're going to do 2, 3, ABC. SLC 84111. Oops. And then if I don't put in a valid zip code, it will say, hey, you don't have a valid zip code, phone number, and then alternative phone, birth date. If I just do, it's going to say, hey, you need to format it correctly. So it should be formatted month hyphen 13. Oops. So it will give you error messages as you're typing along. One thing I would recommend, and I would make sure to emphasize with your students as they're filling this out, make sure the email address is correct. That is the main way we communicate. And so if they don't put a correct email address, we don't know how to communicate with them. So make sure that when they put in their email address, it is correct and it's one that can accept emails from an outside source. So I know sometimes LEAs make it with their school email account. They can only email within the district. So make sure whatever email address they put, it's one that they can receive emails from us. So we're at Test High. And then my district is CTE. Okay, it will ask me what my citizen status is. Make sure to select something. And then, am I a Utah resident? Yes. Then it says, are you going to be graduating from a Utah public school before September 1st? The option or no. And then parent guardian information. So I'm going to say mistest. Oops, I didn't put enough digits in. I missed a number. Okay, and then address 123 ABC, SLC, Utah, 84, oops, 1. And then email address, again, make sure it is spelled correctly. And then we've included 2 parent or guardians so that if it's divorced parents, split households, they can put both contact information. Then a high school counselor or your CTE coordinator. So I'm just going to put Brecken, Haywood. Oops. Okay, media release. Again, we've linked it here. It's also on the website like I showed. So I'm just going to pick some random. When I click here, I'm going to pick a random document. It will upload that. Here's my letter of recommendation. Going to pick a random document again. So post-secondary, you can have a student can do 2 options. The first choice is like, yes, this is absolutely where I want to go. And then they're like, if they have a second option, awesome, great. Have them put a second option. But if they're like, no, I am dead set on going to Utah Tech University because that's where my parents went, there's no other options, don't put a second option. A lot of times I will get kids that are awarded a scholarship and they're like, well, this isn't really my first choice. What should I do? And I'm like, that's up to you. But just know that if you accept this scholarship and you really don't want to go there, you're taking away an opportunity from another student. So I always just kind of try to tell them, like, don't put down a institution if you really have no desire of going to that institution. And then let's say, well, if I can't go there, then I'll go to SUU, which is just up the street. Not really up the street, but you know what I mean. Okay. Next question is what is your intended occupation? So what is it that they want to be in life? So I said teacher. Okay. Then it says, what pathway does your intended occupation align to? So that tells me that I am going to go to my K-12 teaching as a profession pathway. Okay. And then it says, is the pathway available? So at Utah Tech, if I go back to these FAQs, oops, excuse me, FAQ, and I go to Utah Tech, oops, I went to Utah Valley, sorry. If I go to Utah Tech, K-12 teaching as a profession is an option. So I can verify like, yes, it is available. So yes, I have verified that my pathway is available. Here's my transcripts. Make sure that it is highlighted. So, and make sure that we can still read it. Sometimes kids will print it off an ink printer and then highlight it, and then it smears and we can't read the courses and stuff. So make sure it's something eligible or so that we can still read it. Then it's going to tell you to get your education pathways and you're going to highlight all of those courses. So if I click right here, it's going to say, do you want to open up this link? Yes, I really do. It's going to open up. You can select which pathway charts. Pathways always last for 4 years because it will start when a student can be in 9th grade and it goes all the way into 12th grade. So that's why you'll see pathway charts listed here. So if I go down to education, I want my K-12 pathway. This is what I'm going to print. Okay. So then if I'm looking at my transcript and I have taken Math 1050, I'm going to highlight Math 1050. If I've taken Aspiring Educators, I'm going to highlight this. If I've taken Human Development, and then I've either taken English 1010, so it will let me identify. So we want to make sure that what they've highlighted on their transcript, they've also highlighted on their pathway so that they can understand, okay, am I a concentrator or a completer? Okay. Now, the difference between the two, if a student is a concentrator, it means that they've taken the core concentrator course and one of the Explorer courses. Okay. That is a concentrator. If they are a completer, they have to take a concentrator course as well as either Explorer concentrator, because some of them have multiple concentrator, or completer course that totals 3 credits. Okay. So a concentrator is they have to take a concentrator and an Explorer course. A completer is they have to take a concentrator course and then combined between Explorer, concentrator, and completer, it totals 3 credits. And you should be able to identify that on the transcript because it will tell you, most transcripts tell you how many credits you got for a course. Okay. Questions on that? So once I've highlighted all of that, I'm going to add another document. And then the next question is, am I a concentrator or a completer? I'm going to say I'm a completer because I'm just an overachiever. Okay. And then my skills certs, remember you want it in one document. So I'm just gonna pick another one. And then it says, this is where your essay questions start to come into play. So it says, did you participate in a qualified, is Brecken on?
Yes, she is.
Brecken, I'm going to let you take over this. So Brecken Haywood is the work-based learning specialist in our office. I'm going to let her talk about this section of the application because a lot of times students get confused as well as counselors or parents on whether or not it's a qualified work-based learning. So Brecken, we're going to pretend that this kid wants to be, AKA me, wants to be an elementary school teacher. So then you can use that as your example.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for having me, Ashley. As she said, I'm Brecken and I oversee our K-12 work-based learning program. When it comes to this scholarship in particular, we're really looking for students who have work-based learning experiences that relate to their pathways, that align with their pathway. So in this case, it would be with the teaching as a profession pathway. We put in there, did you participate in a qualified work-based learning experience? And then it has internship, externship, and apprenticeship. So an internship, for by our definition, is an experience with a industry mentor for approximately 40 hours or more. So it has to be a minimum of 40 hours. that aligns with their CTE pathway. And also, there are learning intentions that are involved with the internship. So they're not going to the experience and doing the same job or job responsibilities over and over again, but there's actually a progression in knowledge and skill learned. So there are objectives, learning objectives that they're hitting along the way. That is a course in our a course offering in our CTE program. It's called CTE internship. So that's one way. The other way is an externship, and we're defining that kind of here by experiences that are happening with a mentor, an industry mentor within their aligned pathway, that potentially could be captured in another type of CTE course. So, for example, Ashley, I believe the teaching as a profession kids, they go out and do observations. If that's a pretty prolonged, extensive experience where they're observing and maybe helping within a classroom, that could be considered an externship. In other areas, other pathways, it would be things like clinical hours and or some of our capstone programs where they're actually working on projects, real projects with an industry mentor. Those could be considered in that category. And then we've got the CTE Youth Apprenticeship course. This is an actual course code under CTE internships as well, or excuse me, under the CTE pathway program. The youth apprenticeship course has to be a paid experience, and the apprenticeship, a true apprenticeship actually combines on-the-job training with related technical instruction. So they actually have to have current coursework that aligns with their pathway while also being or doing those on-the-job training hours. And there's an actual approval process, an approved program for our youth apprenticeships that kind of has to go statewide approval. So that's the youth apprenticeship program, and we'll be looking for those on the actual transcript that students include. So CT internship and the youth apprenticeship both should be shown on the transcript. They need to have already been completed. I know that there's some questions that have come up about potentially a senior starting their internship in the spring. That won't count because they haven't completed it yet. And that's across the board, so that'll be the same for everyone. We won't be accepting any internships or apprenticeships that start in the spring because this application has to be turned in before then. But we really are looking for experiences that are aligned with their pathway that help increase their experience with on-the-job training and industry connection while also working on their course pathway or their pathway courses and they helping them to see the connection there. So they're working on gaining knowledge and skill through their CTE courses, and then they get these experiences on the job. That's what we're looking for that these few questions here on the scholarship application.
There are some questions in the chat. Does the likelihood of getting a scholarship decrease if they haven't done a qualified work-based learning experience?
Let's put it this way. It depends on the institution. So for example, with SUU, there's only one scholarship. And so that makes it very highly qualified. So if a student's wanting to go to SUU and hasn't done a work-based learning or hasn't done a CTSO or things along those lines, them getting the SUU one, yeah, they probably wouldn't. But if it's with Utah Valley where there's 20 scholarships, it's a possibility they could get it. So there's kids that don't participate in a CTSO and still get a scholarship. There's kids that don't participate in a work-based learning and still get a scholarship. But with those ones where the scholarships, there's only a few, it's very hard because it's competitive. But for the other ones where there's multiple scholarships, it doesn't it just depends.
Okay, the next one really quick. Should they use a personal email or the school email? Do you have a recommendation?
So like I said, if they're using a school email, I would make sure that they can receive outside emails from the LEA. So if they have it on lockdown where they can only receive emails from emails within the district, then I would say use a personal email address. I would also say use one that's going to be checked. Because if you sit down or if you sit and just you're like, oh, I check my emails every 2 months, well, that's not going to do much for them.
Okay, and then the last one, are applicants penalized for not having Explorer courses?
They would be because they wouldn't be able to be a concentrator or or a completer because there's not enough courses in the concentrator and completer. So yes, they would be penalized in that area.
Thanks.
Okay, perfect.
Actually, I forgot to mention too,
Yes,
those other two questions up there.
yeah,
When it asks if they received credit for their work-based learning experience, once again, those are those two classes, the internship and the youth apprenticeship course. And then when it says, if yes, where did the work-based learning experience take place? Just make sure that that actually is the address of the location of the employer, the industry mentor that they're working with.
yeah, it's not the work-based learning coordinator within their high school. It's actually the place where they're going to do their job.
Their experience, yeah.
Yeah, and make sure, again, if what they're putting down, so if I put down Burger King and I come up here and I'm like, I want to be an elementary school teacher, that doesn't align. So that should be like a red flag saying, okay, this isn't a work-based learning experience that aligns to what I want to be. Okay. And then the short answer question, describe how your work-based learning experience prepared you for your future career pathway goals. Please include your job responsibilities, positive and negative experiences, because we all have them in our jobs, and how the work-based learning experience aligns to the future pathway and career goals. I always say, remember, the committee has no idea who these students are. So we only have what they put in their short answers. So make sure that they're telling us about the experiences. We can't assume because they were at a school shapes or numbers or whatever. They have to tell us. And so make sure that when you're describing it, this is someone that has no clue who your students are and need to provide that information.
Actually, one other thing to add to that too
Yep.
is we say positive and negative experiences too, because really this is the time where students are learning. We hope that they aren't getting into an internship at that capstone level and then realizing that they don't want to do it and then leaving. We hope that they are able to continue on because we want that to be a high quality experience. But sometimes they really do go through that internship and realize that that's not what they want to do. And those are excellent learning experiences still. And so we want to hear the good and the bad there too. Really that description is really to help us see what they've learned and how they can reflect on the experience they had.
Perfect. That's what I was just going to say. It's their reflection on, is this really what I want to do?
Yeah.
Next question is, did they participate in a CTSO? Below are all of the state approved CTSOs. And so these are the ones that we're looking at. They can select all of the ones that they have participated in. And then again, they have a chance to talk about if they participated in a CTSO, explain. Now, the other great thing about this is, let's say if I was in a small rural district, I don't necessarily have all the same opportunities as Jordan School District, Davis, Alpine, all of those bigger ones. And so one thing that we do is if your school or if your district is identified as a nest school, we automatically give those students 5 points. And we have done that for multiple years. It does not give them an advantage in the scholarship application, but it does give them a fair playing field because those schools don't necessarily have the same opportunities as larger districts or LEAs. So that is something. So let's say that in my smaller district, I couldn't do Educators Rising because it wasn't available, but I did do HOSA. And so I can talk about the things I learned in HOSA that will help me be a better educator. So I did CPR training and I competed at the event for these things. And the reason I did that is because as an elementary school teacher, I'm going to have to hand out millions of Band-Aids and I never know if I'm going to have to do a scraped knee or something like that. So if they can tie in, like, even though I didn't have the opportunity to do Ed Rising, I did pick a CTSO and participate in things that will help me in the future in the career path I went to. So, then the next one is other leadership, citizenship, and or service experiences. So if I didn't participate, but I am heavily involved in the senior centers in my community, things within my church or things like that, I can still put in that information and put it here. If I go volunteer at the library for reading group or something, whatever it is, this is where they can do it. If I did other sports, if I was captain of the baseball team, or I did honor society or all of those sort of things, this is where I can put that information in. The next one is outline and discuss your educational and occupational timeline. This is where we want to see, like, the student has really thought about what's the next step. So if it's, I plan to go to Utah Tech to get my bachelor's in elementary education. These are the courses that I still need to complete in. And then I hope to go to teach in this area or whatever. This is them explaining what their path is or what it is they want to do. And then the next three questions are just kind of reflecting on their high school experience. So looking at high school, how did CTE courses you complete prepare you for life after high school? What advantages did they provide you for your college and career plan? So taking the CTE courses, being a concentrator or completer, what were the benefits of that? The next one is, what advice would you give to future students about taking CTE courses during high school? And then shout out to an educator. Was there a teacher, counselor, admin who was especially influential in your career choice? Again, shout out to Miss Parks, my business teacher. Like, she was the one that made me want to be a business teacher. And so that's kind of a place for students to kind of do a shout out to their educator of who helped them. So when I get done, let me see, did I type in something for all of the requirements? I just want to show you what happens. So test. So I will click here. I will type my signature. Oops. I'm going to apply that. I'm going to enter my email address. This is very important. Right here, make sure your email address is correct, because what's going to happen is I'm going to hit click to sign. You are not done right here. So it's going to tell you, go check your email that you just put in that box to verify that you received it. So here's my Adobe sign. So I come here and I confirm my email address. Once I hit that, it says, hey, yay, we've gotten your scholarship. Okay. The other nice thing is that a kid can submit as many times as they want. So if they're like, oh my gosh, I just thought of something else that I could add, they can submit 20 applications. Okay. However, we are going to take the very last one because we assume that is the final, that is the perfect one things. So if they find another skill certification or an industry certification, they can do that. But again, they can submit as many times as they want. and we just take the very last one. All applications are due January 30th, so it's the last Friday in January by 11:59 p.m. Utah time. So, questions?
There's one more question in the chat. Do they
Mhm.
have to be registered in the work-based learning class to get credit for an externship? For instance, if the pathway is PT assistant and the student reached out to the athletic trainer at the high school to work with them and become more familiar with careers pertaining to athletics.
Brecken, I'm going to let you answer that question. If she's still on.
Did we lose Brecken?
No, I see her on.
Oh, I see her. Yeah. Brecken, if you're on, you're muted. We're not hearing you.
Bethany, will you copy and paste that question and I will email it to Brecken and get the answer and then you can send it out on the listserv when we send out the video? Does that
Sure.
work?
Yep.
Sorry, I don't want to speak for, I am not an expert in that part, so I don't want to say.
Okay, that's the only other question I see. Are there other questions that you have regarding the scholarships? These scholarships? There's another one. I thought the
So,
application could be modified. Oh, did you see it, Ashley? Sorry.
yep. So yes, they can save it, but just in case something happens or if they submit when they do it, you can only, I believe from what I saw, you can save it once and then go back and edit it. So it just depends, but we let them know. It's kind of like the competency thing, right? You can submit as many times as you want. We just take the very last one. So that's why.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming today. We'll let Ashley stay on for a little bit, but we'll let those of you that need to go. I know your time is precious. So feel free to get off. And if you have other things you need to do, if you want to stay on, Ashley will stay on for a little bit. Again, thank you all for coming and joining us today.
Yep, I will put Brecken's email in the chat, Brecken Haywood at